at the time that he died, he was so close to safety. I've walked it this morning. He was 90 seconds away from the Aegean Sea. He'd clearly become slightly disorientated. The video I've watched of the security camera footage, where he's a pretty indistinct figure, shows him zigzagging backwards and forwards along a perimeter fence, and he couldn't see the small gates that would have been in front of him, and that took 5 minutes. And then he walked down the path, which is marked with red and blue paint, and then I think he realised that he was becoming seriously unwell, and he veered off. And there's a little trickle from an underground spring, and he sat there, put himself in the best position to try to recover. And unfortunately, he wasn't. That didn't happen. If he could have walked for another 90 seconds, he would have made it to the sea. That's the awful thing about the death of this much loved man. I've been out this morning at 6 a.m. to see the rescuers resume their search for Dr. Mosley, and even with the sea breeze, it was uncomfortably hot. So, as one of the rescuers told me last night, we are in a race against time.
Breakfast.
Now, the search has resumed for a fourth day for the TV doctor Michael Mosley, who's missing on the Greek island of Symi. The Times chief news correspondent David Brown is on the island, and he's with us now. Good morning.
Morning, Chloe.
Now, bring us the latest details here, because there felt like there was very much a shift when it emerged that this CCTV footage of Dr. Mosley was discovered in a village. Just take us through the sort of timeline of events of what we do know.
I was really hoping I'd be on this morning bringing you some good news. The development yesterday was we'd known that Dr. Mosley had left a nearby beach, St. Nicholas Beach, and he'd walked along a coastal path. And the focus of the searches initially had been on that path. The Coast Guard were there, divers were there, the idea that perhaps he'd got lost or fallen into the sea. Then yesterday there was a discovery of a series of CCTV cameras which showed he'd reached the nearest village, he'd walked through that village, and I've actually watched the CCTV footage from each of these restaurants as he walks past, and then almost inexplicably goes to a path that leads up into the mountains. And it would be possible for him to walk back to his villa in the port, the capital of this island, but it would have taken 3 hours for a fit younger man. It was also ferociously hot. It is ferociously hot. I've been out this morning at 6 a.m. to see the rescuers resume their search for Dr. Mosley, and even with the sea breeze, it was uncomfortably hot. So, as one of the rescuers told me last night, we are in a race against time.
So this mountainous path, which much of the media is describing this morning as treacherous, just give us more details on it, because this is a 67-year-old man who's walking along with an umbrella to shade himself, but it's incredibly hot and it's a difficult route, difficult terrain.
It is. It's a little known route. Even people who know the island very well don't know it and wouldn't consider using it. This mountain is full of sheep, and along the path there is stone-built huts in which the sheep can shelter. So we know, was the rescuers told me last night, they'd been searching these huts, which are dotted all over this mountain, to see if Dr. Mosley had sought shelter in there. There isn't much other shelter up there. It is rocky. There's occasional bushes. There's actually a wonderful aroma up there of thyme. The thyme bushes grow everywhere, but it's a hostile environment. We don't know how much water Dr. Mosley had. He was carrying a small rucksack. We don't think he stopped to buy any water in the village. And this is a grueling terrain, even for the rescuers who are fully equipped, have all of their equipment, communications equipment. Dr. Mosley had left his mobile telephone at home. So there's puzzlement about why he would take this journey. Why not take the much easier route through the roads back to his villa, or simply catch a bus or taxi?
So what are the police and the rescuers saying about, their strategy and their lines of investigation?
They've had the drones up again. It really is just searching this terrain. They were rather hopeful of finding him quite quickly when the searches resumed this morning. They didn't have a great deal of time last night. And the longer it takes, the more worried they're becoming. They were very worried last night. They hoped for an early resolution today. It is barren up there. It's a big area. It's not a well-marked path. And the rescuers are saying, if you lose the trail, you would get lost, deeply lost, and you could be ambling around. Hopefully he's sought some shelter from this very intense sun and is holding out, waiting for the rescuers. We know Dr. Mosley's three oldest children are on the island. We haven't seen them yet, and they probably wouldn't wish to get involved in the rescue because it's, as I keep stressing, it is very difficult up in these mountains.
And have his family or the friends that he was on holiday with spoken at all? Have any eyewitnesses spoken? It's just a case of kind of piecing together not only where he is, but sort of the motivation for that.
I've spoken to lots of eyewitnesses. He was quite distinctive, carrying this purple umbrella through. People recommended seeing him. They saw him set off on this coastal path. It was actually the umbrella which was to prove crucial in making sure they'd identified the correct person as he walked through the village. The local authorities have spoken to Dr. Mosley's children. They've described him as an adventurer. They said he did like to sort of go off-piste, as it were. That used to like seeing the natural environment, had an interest in wildlife. Their speculation is that he left his wife, Claire, back on the beach, got to the village and thought, why don't I just have a little extra walk? Why don't I just carry on a bit further? And that would be within his character, a man who likes to explore. And the wildlife and the scenery over here is absolutely stunning. But the temperatures are ferocious. Even the locals who are used to this sun say this heat wave is unprecedented.
Gosh, David, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Really grateful to you. That is the Times chief news correspondent, David Brown. He's on the Greek island of Symi. It's the fourth day now of that search for the TV doctor, Michael Mosley. And I mean, whenever we speak to anybody about this, the time and time again, just keep coming back to the intense heat there. And it is going to be incredibly challenging even for the rescuers, let alone for Michael Mosley as he is out there.
Just to bring you the latest on the search for the missing TV doctor Michael Mosley on the Greek island of Symi. It continues into its third day. His 4 adult children have arrived on Symi today and are taking part in the search. Joining me now is Evdoxia Limberi, who's the journalist based in London for the Greek state broadcaster ERT. Evdoxia, kalimera.
Kalimera.
Thank you for joining us. What is the latest of the... I've been keeping sort of, as I'm sure you are, abreast with the Greek press as well. We've had that latest CCTV footage showing Michael Mosley did reach the village of Pedi from the beach of Agios Nikolaos. But what happened to him afterwards?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? All the forces involved in the search for Dr. Michael Mosley are currently working north of Pedi, this little village that there is CCTV footage showing him that he arrived after the beach of Agios Nikolaos. Specifically, they turned their searches on the new Noulias Hill, as they call it. New video footage just a while ago, actually, of a man believed to be the missing British TV and radio presenter has been obtained by the BBC, contributes to the same scenario. The footage shows the 67-year-old walking with an umbrella next to the marina in the village of Pedi on Symi on Wednesday, heading towards Rocky Hills, the mountain. The terrain in the area is described as very difficult and dangerous, but he supposedly had a map on which he had marked the spot. On Saturday morning, this morning, a meeting was held between the leaders of the fire brigade, the Coast Guard police, as well as the volunteers involved in the operation, to determine the points where the search will continue today. Red Cross also arrived at Greek of course, also arrived in the island to search. A helicopter, drones, special dogs are also searching for the Michael Mosley. It's a huge operation, Alexis. It is believed that the doctor walked from Pedi to Aegean Marina, which is another village, but he went through the mountain to go there on foot. But under scorching heat, it was nearly 43 degrees. And the questions now are, why did he choose this under the sun of 43 degrees, under this heat, to walk through a very dangerous, not even path. It's not an open path. It's a rocky mountain, and you can easily lose your way because there are little, maybe like paths that the goats are opening,
Yes.
to go nowhere actually. So this is the big questions, but in the end, many people have expressed the hope that today he will be found.
And we should tell people as well that. I mean, I was struck when I saw the CCTV footage, and I'm sure some people will have seen it on social media and on the website, that he's the only one out there, because with that amount of heat, 43 degrees, all the local people are indoors. No one is wandering around outside. This was around 1:30, just before 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
The sun is probably just past its absolute hottest of midday, but no one really ventures outside. And also, if Lucia, tell us a little bit about the island of Simi. I mean, I've never had the pleasure of visiting it myself, but one thing I do know from as a kid in the classrooms, you always learn that Simi is this sort of rocky terrain. People will have noticed in pictures, there's not many trees. There's not anywhere to sort of take cover and have a shade. It's rocky. There's ravines left, right, and centre. It is quite a perilous path if he had chosen to go over the mountain.
Yeah, this is a reason, Alexis, but that's, you can go to the beaches, to the beautiful beaches around the island. Better way to go there to reach the beaches is by boat. There are no roads, there are no paths. And I was listening to the mayor in RT News today. He stated that the search will continue until Dr. Mosley is found. He added this question, that he's not sure why the missing prisoner would attempt to make this long, potentially arduous journey in such heat. And he didn't choose, for example, to sit in a cafeteria in Pedi and have a glass of water or a coffee and wait until the bus comes to take him to the place he wants to go. And Simi now is a small island. It's near Rhodes. It's under 66 square kilometers, inhabited by 2,600 people. It's a small island, but as you said, there is no vegetation, there are no trees, there are no bushes. It's only rocks, rocky mountains. So it's not an easy task to go hiking up these mountains, because there are no open paths as well. So it has never been, to the best of my knowledge, any criminal incident there. It's a peaceful, picturesque island, but it's a rocky kind of picturesque. It's mountainous. So it's a big question, as you said, but everybody, as I said, have the hope that today he will be found.
Yeah, absolutely. The search continues. Evdokia, thank you so much for giving us your time. Evdokia Limberi, the journalist for the Greek state broadcaster ERT.
Michael Mosley's family say they will not lose hope after Greek authorities appeared to rule out the possibility he fell into water. Let's speak to David Brown, the chief news correspondent at The Times. A real mystery, David, surrounding Dr. Mosley's disappearance, and now his wife, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley, has given a statement this afternoon. Can you tell us more about what she said?
Yeah, afternoon, Henry.
Hi.
I've been watching the rescue efforts all afternoon, and then we had this real impassioned plea from Claire Bailey Mosley, I thought, saying it's been 3 days since her husband went for a walk. He left her on a beach where she was staying with friends, and the talks about the difficulties of those days, thanks the local people, the local authorities and the British consulate for helps, and ends this relatively brief statement with words, "We will not lose hope." And the family haven't lost hope. I saw her children, their children, walking across the mountainous area where Dr. Mosley, their father, was last seen on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, and he was walking in 43-degree heat, and he was walking along, I think, a pathway that he didn't know very well, and there can only be, well, there's only limited options that they could be exploring, surely, because it's not a very big island.
You're right, and I've spoken to a number of teams of rescuers from the Red Cross, the fire brigade, the police, and mountain rescue. They have highlighted the fact that the temperature here has been ferocious, up to 48 degrees. We know that Dr. Mosley was carrying a small rucksack. He didn't stop at any of the shops or bars on his route to get fresh water. I spent a couple of hours today at a resort called Aegean Marina, which would have been on his route. And the staff there have absolutely no recollection of him arriving there to get fresh supplies. Henry, I can't really stress enough how hot it is here.
Yeah.
And without water, it would be difficult to survive in these conditions. But Dr. Mosley was fit. He is a doctor.
Well, I was going to ask you about
He's used to
that. I mean,
extreme-
he's well known for the 5-2 diet. He's constantly telling us about our health and fitness and positivity in life. You would hope that if anybody could survive whatever has happened to him, it would be him.
Absolutely. If someone can do this, although he's a man of 67, so
Yep.
not in the first flush of youth, he is a healthy man. He prides himself on his fitness. The distance isn't great. The issue here is the heat. It's part of the island, and you're quite right, Henry, it's a really small island, but this is so remote. Many local people I've spoken to have never walked on this path, which Dr. Mosley, for some reason that still isn't understood, he decided to take this path, perhaps trying to get back to his villa. He didn't have a mobile telephone. The path isn't well laid out. The rescuers have warned me, be very careful. It's easy to lose the track, and then you're in the rocks, and it's difficult to find your way back.
Yeah.
But I've been watching the helicopter circling overhead for an hour and a half today with thermal imaging cameras, trying to find a trace of him. So the Greek authorities are putting in significant effort into this, and they're absolutely puzzled as to where has he gone to.
Really strange. Let's hope we find out in the next few hours. David Brown, Chief News Correspondent at The Times, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Katie, you are in Greece this weekend as the search continues for Michael Mosley. Just bring us the story so far. Where are we up to tonight and how have we got here?
Yeah, well, we are on the third full day of searching the island today, and every day has sort of been characterised by a different kind of search. So, I mean, Michael went missing on Wednesday afternoon. His wife reported that to the police in the evening. And essentially you had, over the last few days, you've had police coming over from mainland Greece, you've had firefighters. Over the last few days, there have been more than 100 people out looking for Michael, and that's focused on different parts of the island. At one point, they thought that he might be in some woodland by a football pitch, sort of towards the village of Pedi, where we have seen CCTV identify him. But then yesterday, the police came across further CCTV, which suggested that he'd gone up into this really rocky part of the island, right up in the mountains, which actually, you know, myself and a couple of other journalists did some of the walk today towards the port where he was staying. And honestly, it was 10 a.m. We didn't want to do it after 10 minutes. It was so hot, really awful terrain to be walking in. So the search today has been focusing there. The day before, there were divers out at sea. The police were sort of exploring the possibility that perhaps he'd fallen from a high point into the sea, but they seem to have ruled that out. But again, every day it seems to be changing, and it really does remain a mystery.
Right, and so the CCTV has helped to sort of piece a few bits together, hasn't it? What specifically has the CCTV been able to rule in and out?
Absolutely. Well, obviously we know from Michael's wife, Claire, that he left this beach called St Nicholas Beach at around 1:30, and it was assumed he'd walked along a coastal path. And the Times on the ground on Thursday found CCTV from a cafe that showed that he must have come past that path. And then effectively he walked around a bay, and this new CCTV, you wouldn't, it was quite an illogical route that he seems to have taken. You would think if you were going back to Simi, there's actually a more straightforward route, but obviously he didn't have a phone with him. Doesn't seem to, he may have checked some kind of map, might have asked for locals for help on the way. So that's what the CCTV has helped to do. It's helped to rule out, there are lots of other paths he could have taken. And so you would hope that, you know, the search party is covering a 6.5 kilometre radius at the moment, but you would hope that with every little bit of information like this, they do come a little bit closer to figuring out what's happened.
And I suppose the fact that he was there makes it all the stranger that they can't find him, because that is an incredibly small town, an incredibly small village, isn't it?
Absolutely, and before that CCTV as well, it's an island. It was quite plausible that he'd gone for a swim and perhaps something had happened in the water. But now it really does seem like something happened on land. And I say that walk, I wouldn't have wanted to do it in the 35, 37 degree heat, which is what it was on Wednesday when he went missing. But you can walk it safely. I wouldn't want to do it, but you can do it, which again, that's really puzzled locals. And actually, I spoke to a couple of British tourists today who they do enjoy their hill walking. So I would not say they're your average walker, although they were in their late 60s and 70s. And they did it quite confidently. So it really, every time you learn a little bit of more information on this story, it actually becomes more perplexing.
Right. And just final point on the sea issue then. Tonight, Katie, authorities are all but ruling out the fact that he has fallen in the sea.
They've not confirmed that they've ruled it out, but there were divers on Friday, and today the police confirmed to us that there were no diving teams out. So it appears that they've ruled out that line of inquiry. In addition, all of the rescue teams that we saw today were focusing on that mountainous area, which goes through, it's past the village of Peli, over the mountains and towards the port of Simi, where he was staying with his wife and friends.
And we've heard from his wife today, haven't we, and his family, Katie. What have they said?
So they've said that they're still hanging out hope that he will be found. And, they've also obviously thanked the huge amounts of people that have shown up to try and help to find Michael. We believe we did see his children out on the rescue mission today. They didn't want to give their own statement, but we have been told that when they came to the island last night, they were very, very keen to get out first thing on the ground. And so, it's just a case of them really hoping that the best scenario will materialise.
It's extraordinary, really, to be perfectly honest with you, Casey, to be sat here and having this conversation with you, because I was with Michael a couple of weeks ago. We were on a television show together. We were in the green room, and his wife Claire. We were on a panel together, and he was so warm and so kind and such a very sweet man. We had a relatively brief encounter, in the grand scheme of things, but the time that we did spend together chatting was, I sort of carried it with me in the days afterwards, thinking, gosh, yeah, such a lovely, lovely guy. And it seems from the outpouring of affection that there has been for him, Katie, since he's disappeared, that's a universal experience for people.
Absolutely, and you saw that on social media the moment the story went live that he went missing. But I did also hear it from everyone on the ground today. Even locals who just thought they'd seen him said that they'd looked him up afterwards and they'd read all about him, and he just seemed like a really intelligent, very decent guy. And one of the British tourists that I spoke to today, who just on holiday, as I said, with her walking group, they decided first thing in the morning, again, even though the temperatures today were in their late 20s, to go and retrace that route. They spent hours from 9 a.m. till 1:30 when we spoke to them, looking for him. And Sue, one of the walkers, had said to me that she listened to his BBC Radio 4 show all the time. So it's just really upsetting.
What happens next then, Katie?
Well, the search, we've heard from rescue teams today that the search is definitely continuing tomorrow. There was a point earlier in the week where the mayor said that they expected a search mission to run for about 5 days. And obviously, the longer this goes on with the heat, and if there is any possibility that he has fallen into the sea, or, you know, he doesn't have the sort of water supply, it gets it gets far less likely that we will have a good outcome. But, you know, everyone on the ground today seemed to be very willing to keep going until they can deliver the family a definitive answer.
The wife of the missing doctor and TV presenter Michael Mosley has described the days since his disappearance as the longest and most unbearable. Dr Claire Bailey Mosley said her family, some of whom have joined the search, will not lose hope. Let's catch up now with David Brown, the Times chief news correspondent, who is on the Greek island of Symi. He's been there for a couple of days. Dr Mosley went missing on Wednesday. Morning, David.
Morning, Callum. Yeah, day 5 of the searches. I'm in the area overlooking where the searches will resume today, where we know Dr Mosley was last captured on CCTV camera, inexplicably walking up a path to the mountains with temperatures of about 45 degrees and sheltered by an umbrella. And he hasn't been seen since, despite pretty extensive searches.
So those extensive searches, I mean, how extensive are we talking? Is it possible to put it in context of a percentage, for example, of how much is left to search?
They seem to have searched a significant proportion of this mountainous headland where he was last seen. It's a strange area, Callum. It's basically rock, a few small shrubs. There's no trees, but there are ravines. Some of the rocks are large. There's an area right at the end, which I visited yesterday, which is locally known as the Abyss, which is a network of caves and tunnels, which was being searched yesterday. The real difficulty the rescuers have is it is so hot. Even experienced Greek rescue teams are struggling with the temperatures.
So what is the, I suppose, the objective today? Where are they searching as today goes on, and how are they searching?
The focus is on this headland where he was last seen. They've got teams who walk along these rocks, this rocky promontory. They've also had the helicopter with thermal imaging cameras, was up for an hour and a half yesterday. There was a couple of moments where it hovered for a couple of minutes and we thought it had found something significant, but then it would move on. They've had divers out. They've bought a sniffer dog from Athens. Unfortunately, it's so hot that the sniffer dog is finding it difficult to cope with the temperatures as well. There's been volunteer groups. Yesterday, I met Dr. Mosley's children who themselves walked the route that it was believed he might be trying to take back to the villa where he'd been staying with his wife and friends.
Can I put this comment as well to you, David, from the local mayor, who is quoted as saying, "There is no chance we will call off the searches, but I believe they will conclude somewhere today." And I'm just interested in that sort of time frame.
Yeah, there's a general rule in Greece that if you're missing for 4 days, the searches will then stop. It's a pretty pragmatic view, I guess, on the sense the chances of surviving, unless you have a water supply, are going to be thin. And I know Dr. Mosley's wife, Claire, has been urging the searches to continue. There's been pressure from the British consulate here as well. There is no sense at this stage that it's ending, but it's not a large area. Everybody's absolutely puzzled as to what's happened to Dr. Mosley and what was his motivation for going into this area that even few locals go up there because it's so inhospitable. Yeah. Why do it in the middle of the day?
You also said, David, that you'd met his children, some of whom I know were involved in the search. What did they have to say to you?
They were just really focused on the searches. I met them first actually at the Agua Marina resort where the Abyss network of tunnels is, and then later they came back to Pedi. They're just focused on trying to help. The difficulty that they face, if you're not an experienced rescuer, is if you leave the path, it's very, very easy to get lost. It's not a well-marked path. You can very easily become disorientated, especially with the heat, the sunshine. They were just amateurs. They did have a local guide leading them. In all honesty, it was a lovely effort, but I don't think in practical terms it would have achieved much.
David, thank you very much for the update. It's very good to speak to you, and we'll catch up again soon. But thanks for now. That is David Brown, the Times' chief news correspondent, reporting from the Greek island of Symi. More on those reports that a body has been found in the search for Dr Michael Mosley. David Brown, the Times' chief news correspondent, is on the Greek island of Symi. He's been bringing us regular updates. And David, what have you learned in the last few minutes?
Callum, extremely distressing news. I don't know if you can see behind me, the police have arrived. We discovered a body about 20 minutes ago, a badly decomposed body on the far side of the fence you can see just behind me. The body is wearing the similar clothing to that worn by Dr Michael Mosley, and beside his head is a purple umbrella, and we know that Dr Mosley was carrying an umbrella when he disappeared on Wednesday afternoon. It was discovered by British journalists. I was one of the first people to unfortunately see the very badly decomposed remains. The tragedy is it's just on the other side of the fence from this very popular beach restaurant and bar. It's a lovely place. He was 50 yards from the gate which would have given him entry to this resort. My guess is he might have stumbled and fallen. He's lying on his back with the umbrella rolled up, but lying at the back behind his head. Suggested to me he may have tripped and was unable then to get up and has been there.
We've been following you as you've been moving around the island in the last couple of days. So could you just put the location of where you are in the context?
Yeah, I think as I discussed this morning, Callum, I said I was going to this lovely beach resort of Aegean Marina, which is a 30-minute walk from the village of Pedi, which is the last place we know Dr Mosley was caught on CCTV camera. We know he entered the mountain path that leads to Aegean Marina and then on to the port where he'd been staying with his wife, Claire. This is a pit stop on the way to the port, trying to get back home. It's beside a very nice, extremely nice beach resort at the sort of far end of the Bay of Pedi, and it's very close to an area where I was yesterday called the Abyss. It's a network of caves and tunnels where I spoke to 3 firefighters who I'd seen spent 40 minutes searching this area. They were searching closer to the sea. The body is about 150 yards up from where the sea is.
Okay.
And clearly the rescuers didn't see it. It's in a slight gully by the wall of the fence.
Okay. David, we're going to leave that there, but we appreciate the update. Clearly it's distressing, so we'll let you go and take a moment as well. Thank you very much for the update. That's David Brown, the Times chief news correspondent, reporting from the Greek island of Symi, clearly with some distressing detail about a distressing story. So with apologies if any of you were taken aback by that. That's David Brown reporting from Symi.
Now, Michael Mosley's wife has paid tribute to her wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant husband after the TV doctor's body was found earlier on the Greek island of Symi. He'd been missing since Wednesday after failing to return from a walk. Claire Bailey Mosley said her husband so very nearly made it. He did an incredible climb, took the wrong route and collapsed where he couldn't be easily seen by search teams. The body was found by a local camera crew in a rocky area just metres from a beach bar. The Times reporter David Brown has been at the scene of the discovery.
It's very close to an area where I was yesterday called the Abyss. It's a network of caves and tunnels where I spoke to 3 firefighters who I'd seen spent 40 minutes searching this area. They were searching closer to the sea. The body is about 150 yards up from where the sea is.
Well, we can speak now to a friend of Dr Mosley's. He's also another TV doctor, Philip Hammond. Good afternoon to you, Philip.
Hi, how you doing?
Well, Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And our condolences. This must have come as really the news you were dreading.
The trouble is, when you're a doctor and you've worked in the NHS for a long time, you meet people of all walks of life who are taken too early. And it's always particularly shocking when someone is so full of life. You always thought of Mike as almost indestructible. One of his strands was to self-experiment. He did brave things that he wanted me to do as a presenter. I presented the first 5 series of Trust Me, I'm a Doctor, and Mike was very keen on self-experimentation and wanted me to have a sigmoidoscopy and eat tapeworms and do all sorts of things that I wasn't keen on. So when he took over presenting it, he was very keen to do that. And he also always did it with such vigor and enthusiasm. It's really hard to imagine all that energy and enthusiasm suddenly snuffed out. But his legacy is an
He did
extraordinary
really
one.
have a way of connecting, didn't he? I remember I listened to quite a few of his podcasts, and he'd pick up on a particular subject, an aspect of health that people might be interested in. And he had a brilliant way, didn't he, of exploring a subject like that.
He did. He was fascinated by research. So when he was executive producer and producer on Trust Me, I'm a Doctor, and was across all the stories. He went into it in minute detail. He knew everything. And he'd go down a little scientific rabbit hole and emerge with this little tidbit that he was so enthusiastic about. And then he had this genius of explaining it to people in ways they could understand, but also in ways that would make them want to change their behavior. So I think his podcast, Just One Thing, was a thing of genius. I think it was the BBC's most popular, or certainly one of the most popular podcasts, because it said to people, life is difficult and tough. You're struggling with your health, but here's just one thing you could try this week that will make a small incremental change. And if you add up all these incremental changes, you could make quite a significant difference. And that's actually quite visionary. It's what the NHS needs now. Instead of pulling people out of the river of illness at vast expense, we need more people following Michael's advice to stop them falling in the first place. So I hope his legacy is a wider appreciation of the importance of public health, and it's sort of wound out to people who need it most.
Just finally, I mean, will you have a particular memory? Do you have a particular memory that you could share with us this afternoon? So many people are really going to miss Dr. Michael Mosley. He gave you your first big break. What's your standout memory of him?
It's all of it. It's his laughter. I think above all of it, it's his laughter. He was like a naughty schoolboy. I mean, he was quite a modest person, and he suddenly came alive when he presented. But he was so enthusiastic about it. I can remember him giggling in the background when we filmed a slightly sensitive thing about men trying to regrow their foreskins, and I can remember Mike in the background getting the giggles, and I finding it very difficult to present the piece. But it was his laughter. He was just lovely to work with. You work with a lot of people in the media who can be difficult or tough or bullying or unpleasant. He was always supportive, always enthusiastic, always on top of his brief, and that above everything as well. He'll be sorely missed by all the people who were lucky enough to work with him.
Dr. Philip Hammond, really good of you to come and speak to us about it this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
First, though, more on those reports that a body has been found in the search for Dr. Michael Mosley. David Brown, the Times chief news correspondent, is on the Greek island of Symi. He's been bringing us regular updates. And David, what have you learned in the last few minutes?
Callum, extremely distressing news. I don't know if you can see behind me, the police have arrived. We discovered a body about 20 minutes ago, a badly decomposed body on the far side of the fence you can see just behind me. The body is wearing the similar clothing to that worn by Dr. Michael Mosley, and beside his head is a purple umbrella. And we know that Dr. Mosley was carrying an umbrella when he disappeared on Wednesday afternoon. It was discovered by British journalists. I was one of the first people to unfortunately see the very badly decomposed remains. The tragedy is it's just on the other side of the fence from this very popular beach restaurant and bar. It's a lovely place. He was 50 yards from the gate which would have given him entry to this resort. My guess is he might have stumbled and fallen. He's lying on his back with the umbrella rolled up, but lying at the back behind his head. Suggests to me he may have tripped and was unable then to get up and has been there.
We've been following you as you've been moving around the island in the last couple of days. So could you just put the location of where you are in the context?
Yeah, I think as I discussed this morning, Callum, I said I was going to this lovely beach resort of Aegean Marina, which is a 30-minute walk from the village of Peddy, which is the last place we know Dr. Mosley was caught on CCTV camera. We know he entered the mountain path that leads to Aegean Marina and then on to the port where he'd been staying with his wife, Claire. This is a pit stop really on the way to the port, trying to get back home. It's beside a very nice, extremely nice beach resort at the sort of far end of the Bay of Peddy. And it's very close to an area where I was yesterday called the Abyss. It's a network of caves and tunnels where I spoke to 3 firefighters who I'd seen spent 40 minutes searching this area. They were searching closer to the sea. The body is about 150 yards up from where the sea is.
Okay.
And clearly the rescuers didn't see it. It's in a slight gully by the fence, the wall of the fence.
Okay. David, we're going to leave that there, but we appreciate the update. Clearly it's distressing, so we'll let you go and take a moment as well. Thank you very much for the update. That's David Brown, the Times chief news correspondent, reporting from the Greek island of Symi, clearly with some distressing detail about a distressing story. So with apologies if any of you were taken aback by that. That's David Brown reporting from Symi.
Foul play has been ruled out in relation to the death of the TV doctor Michael Mosley. Police in Greece say he died at around 4 p.m. on Wednesday. That's not long after CCTV footage appeared to show him falling close to where his body was found on the island of Symi. Police sources say there's no sign of criminal activity or an injury that caused his death. We can talk to chief news correspondent for The Times, David Brown, who's live there on the island. Hello to you, David.
Afternoon, John here from this beautiful Greek island of Symi where Dr. Mosley disappeared on Wednesday of last week.
Yeah, it's a beautiful setting for such a sad story, David. And the cause of death, what are they saying there?
They're saying it's natural causes. I think significantly, we've only had the initial results of the coroner's examination. And he has said that the way Dr. Mosley was found, he was in a sitting position. He appeared to have sat down when he died. There was no indication of him falling or striking his head. I was part of a small group of people who discovered the body yesterday, and harrowing circumstances, and I don't want to go into details, but he was in a position where a person with medical knowledge would have positioned themselves if they felt that they'd perhaps overcome by heat, feeling faint, with his feet raised. He was peacefully positioned, and I think this shows that at the time that he died, he was so close to safety. I've walked it this morning. He was 90 seconds away from the Aegean Sea. He'd clearly become slightly disorientated. The video I've watched of the security camera footage, where he's a pretty indistinct figure, shows him zigzagging backwards and forwards along a perimeter fence, and he couldn't see the small gates that would have been in front of him, and that took 5 minutes. And then he walked down the path, which is marked with red and blue paint, and then I think he realised that he was becoming seriously unwell, and he veered off, and there's a little trickle from an underground spring, and he sat there, put himself in the best position to try to recover, and unfortunately he wasn't. That didn't happen. If he could have walked for another 90 seconds, he would have made it to the sea. That's the awful thing about the death of this much loved man.
That is such a terribly sad aspect of the story. And I ask this not in any spirit of recrimination, but the search for this man, is it thought to have done all that could have been done to find him as soon as he might have been found?
I feel very guilty about this, John, because on Saturday I went to the resort. I suspected it might have been a place he was going to. I looked around. I saw Dr. Mosley's 4 children and other friends walk past, retracing his route. I saw a search team over by a place called the Abyss, where there's a network of caves and hidden tunnels. And I walked towards it, and I realised I couldn't see the search team. So just as I got to the fence, I walked back. to get a better view. If I'd have taken 2 more steps forward and looked to the left, I might have seen Dr. Mosley a day earlier than I did when I found him on Sunday. So it's a barren place. It's rocky. The heat was ferocious. I spoke to some of the rescuers, the search team who were there on Saturday who didn't see him, and they described to me about how difficult it was. So I think it's easy to pass blame, but I will blame myself as well if that's the case. It's a hostile terrain, John.
I mean, look, I really do not believe you need to blame yourself in the way that you're telling me you do, David. I mean, tell us about this man, Dr. Mosley. I mean, many will need no background on such a well-known and well-loved character, but for the rest, he was a man with a great profile in public, and he held in such great affection. Just tell us a little bit more about him.
Yeah, well, what's extraordinary, John, of course, I'm on this Greek island where there's people from around the world. And I knew he was an immense figure in Britain for his medical shows, the way he carried out medical experiments on his own body, the way he made medicine and science accessible, the books that have been read by millions of people. What I didn't realise was how popular he was around the world with, because I'm a journalist, people coming up and asking me questions about what had happened, telling me how much they loved him. There is this real sense of international loss on this small Greek island. It is a beautiful place. It is an absolute tragedy what happened to Dr. Mosley. But as his wife has said, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley, he almost reached his goal. She herself has praised the rescuers for their efforts. She's highlighted the fact that it was in a difficult place to spot. It is just one of those awful, awful tragedies. If you could have found the gate and not spent 5 minutes walking around in that heat above 40 degrees, perhaps if he'd have taken more water, I think from the timings, my analysis is he probably got lost on this mountain path. It took him twice as long to reach this resort as would have been expected. If he hadn't deviated and just staggered that 90 seconds more, we'd be telling a different story, and he'd be on television highlighting the dangers of walking in extremely hot temperatures.
Yes, I suppose David, the sort of the permutations are infinite of what might have happened had this happened. This would not be the situation, or that happened. But we say that now, and in a sense, there's little points in it. Although I imagine on the island, I'm getting a really clear sense from you, David, on the impact this would have had on people there. It's all I'm sure people are talking about in every bar, in every cafe.
It is, and for the locals as much as the tourists. I mean, there is puzzlement that a visitor, I know he'd visited here 8 years before, would take this mountain path. As I say, temperatures above 40 degrees. And it is a tough walk. Now, Dr. Mosley would know his body and his physical capabilities better than almost anybody else because of his expertise, his medical background. He's an extremely fit man. He genuinely believed he could have got there. But what the search teams were telling me at the end of last week is if you miss this path, which is only marked by blobs of red and blue paint on rocks, it's very difficult to get back on it. It all looks the same up there. It's rocks, the occasional bush. If you get lost, to get back onto that path, to find those blobs of red and blue paint probably took him about 45 minutes. And he probably wasn't expecting that.
All right, David Brown, thank you for joining us. It is good to get your perspective and your take on what has happened there. Speaking to us live from the island of Symi.
All the rescue teams of the island are looking to find him. With drones, they are into all the island.